From Transport Topics in Washington, D.C., this is RoadSigns. Here is your host, Seth Clevenger.
Thank you for listening to RoadSigns, the podcast series from Transport Topics that explores the trends and technologies that are shaping the future of trucking. In this episode, we're going to examine the rise of agentic AI in the transportation industry. Tech developers are beginning to introduce AI agents that perform specific tasks and make decisions autonomously with minimal human intervention. But how can AI agents fit into logistics operations? And what does this technology mean for back office workers in our industry? If you're not already a subscriber, you can sign up at ttn.ws/ttsubscribe or text TT subscribe to 571-622-0001. And now, to learn more about agentic AI in the freight transportation industry, I'm very excited to bring in Brian Work, president of CloneOps, our program sponsor. CloneOps is a provider of AI-enabled communications technology for logistics operations. Welcome to the podcast, Brian.
Hey, good morning, Seth. It's great to be here. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
So, Brian, I'd like to touch on your own past experience in the transportation industry. You recently joined CloneOps as the company's president. But prior to that, you were the CTO at Transportation Insight Holding Company and also spent 20 years at UPS, including time as CTO at Coyote Logistics and Vice President of IT at UPS Freight. So quite an extensive background in the transportation industry here at some of the leading organizations in our industry. Given that perspective, just tell us how you've seen information technology advance in our industry during the course of your career. And how do you see that, this latest wave of AI that we're talking about fit into that continuum as we look forward?
Yeah, it's been quite a journey. I really am privileged to have had the opportunity to work at the companies that I've worked at, all great companies where I got to work with amazing people and had the opportunity to learn so much. But yeah, technology has transformed just massively over the life of my career. I've seen some pretty old systems and worked with and managed some pretty old systems, green screen, AS400, mainframes, kind of the whole gamut, if you will. So things have transformed really amazingly over the time that I've been a part of this. And it's been incredible to see the different use cases that we can solve now and the speed with which we can solve them. And a lot of that is owing to the evolution of hosting and being able to scale technology, physical technology virtually and have access to it so quickly. And so that's been, I think, one of the big catalysts that's driven a lot of the evolution that we're seeing today. The bar of entry at this point is pretty low to start up a technology company, whereas years and years ago, you would have had access to a data center, buy really expensive equipment and be ready to scale that and manage that. And now, it's a click of a couple of buttons. You can deploy an entire application in literally minutes. So that journey has been, I think, the thing that's unlocked a lot of this capability that we're talking about now.
Yeah, for sure. And, even from my own vantage point, with the technology beat at Transport Topics really for the past 14 years, it's amazing the conversations that we're having now. We were nowhere near that 14 years ago, and even the last 5 years. It's amazing how much has transformed.
And now it's getting down to the last 5 months and the last 5 weeks.
Yeah, that's right. It really is accelerating. And of course, a big part of that is artificial intelligence, AI. You go to a lot of the industry trade shows and conferences, and more, that's what you're hearing about above and beyond anything else. Certainly anything that's a sort of technology-focused conference. In logistics, every second counts. But what if your phone operations worked as fast as your supply chain? Meet CloneOps, AI-powered virtual agents that handle high-volume inbound and outbound calls with speed, accuracy, and zero downtime. Fewer delays, faster response times, and smarter workflows. CloneOps AI frees your team from repetitive calls so they can focus on what drives growth. Ready to turn it on? CloneOps AI, always turned on. We want to spend some time on this podcast talking about the development and deployment of agentic AI, right? This is a huge trend in the technology space right now. And the basic idea here is that AI can automate specific job functions within an organization, essentially acting like virtual employees, at least to an extent. And AI agents are becoming a more widely understood concept, I think, within the past year or so in our industry. But I do think it'd be helpful to start here by clearly defining agentic AI. So when you hear the term, when you use the term, what do you mean by agentic AI?
Yeah, agentic AI is really just a term that we use to describe an autonomous, artificially intelligent capability. That's really at the core of it. It has a lot to do with the independence of the software and how it's able to execute sort of autonomously. It acts more like a trained team member. It handles tasks from start to finish as opposed to sort of assisting the user. It's actually doing the work for the user. And so our CloneOps agents do the work. They don't just suggest what to do.
And that's a good way to contrast this idea with AI co-pilots, right? Past handful of years, we've seen AI co-pilot type applications, Microsoft actually using the term, that are widely available. More and more people are using AI co-pilots as part of their work days and their daily lives. Obviously, there's some overlap here between the idea of an AI agent and an AI co-pilot, but do you view these as distinct trends, or do you see AI agents as kind of an extension or moving beyond what a co-pilot does?
I think they're somewhat distinct. I mean, they work together to support the human in sort of being a force multiplier and helping them become more productive and drive better efficiency. With co-pilots, you're more or less, as the operator, you're more or less directing the work, and it's coming alongside of you and helping you sort of accelerate and maybe creating some things for you along the way to make your job easier. Whereas the agent, you're actually outsourcing the work to the agent and then supervising it is the way that I like to think about it. And these are slightly nuanced. They're very, very closely related, but they're a little bit different. So it's a shift from decision support to really full task execution.
Yeah. And decision making with an AI agent that's making some of these decisions on its own autonomously with a person or a manager overseeing the technology and making sure that it's on track. With all the focus on AI right now, I mentioned how much hype there is behind this right now, and the hype is for good reason. But I think that it's easy for folks to maybe get a little caught up in that or lose sight of how it can solve real problems. Maybe they're just excited about AI without having the right focus on how you really make a difference in the real world with the technology. As we know, technology for technology's sake is rarely a successful approach. I go to CES at the start of each year, typically in Las Vegas, and you see some of that out there, like just amazing technology, but how will this be used? So when we talk about AI, I think it's helpful to kind of bring it down to the real world here, real world operations. What's your advice to listeners, to developers? How can we ensure that AI products solve the right problems in real world logistics operations?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of different ways to think about this. At the core of it is really just thinking about your business and how to accelerate the tasks that happen within your business. Real AI return on investment starts with automating where you really have pain, where opportunity lies. And when you think about voice agents or really any sort of multi-channel communication agents, you really want to think about where are the repetitive communications taking place, right? In the transportation space, we see a lot of success with things like tracking, like calling a driver and saying, hey, where are you at? That's a pretty common call to make. They're made really frequently. They can be handled by agents without really a lot of complexity necessarily to the calls. And so that's a really easy use case to start with if you're just dipping your toe in the water. Our agents are trained on industry workflows, not just language. So they really are built to adapt into your business, the way that you operate your business. And when you look at the makeup of our team, you'll see that there are a great number of logistics experts and freight technology experts in our business. And so the tools are being put together really thoughtfully and really are focused on, founder Dave Bell obviously knows a great deal about operating freight companies. And so that's baked into the product and is a big part of the reason why I think we are a great partner for a lot of the freight companies out there. But the thing that's most important for all of the potential users of this technology, whether it's ours or someone else's, is the ability to adapt the change into your organization. So organizational change management is at the core of all of this. Your teams, your people have to be ready for this. They have to understand the benefits and see the benefits in it for themselves in order for them to really want to embrace it and adopt it. And so when you look at our platform, we've built it with that in mind. It's built to accelerate the work that an individual can perform. It's not set up to replace the worker. We've put a dashboard in place that allows a user to configure multiple agents to do multiple tasks, and they can monitor all the activity that the agents are doing for them, and they can intervene wherever they need to. And so we see that as sort of the right entry point for this technology in this sort of space and time.
Yeah, well, that's an excellent segue to my next question here. Whenever we talk about automation, AI, especially agentic AI, there's always questions about the workforce implications, right? Sometimes there's concern about jobs being automated away, but history has shown us that automation usually creates as many jobs as it replaces, right? It changes the types of work that's performed, but it creates opportunities while also driving efficiency and typically profitability along the way. So in your view, Brian, you gave us an example of how you're approaching this, but from your vantage point, what does the rise of agentic AI mean for the future of jobs in the logistics industry?
I think like any technology, when you're going through sort of a revolution like we are right now, it can be scary. People are going to react with a certain amount of fear. We've seen this throughout generations. You think back to things like when tractors replaced people working in the fields, for example. That would have been very intimidating for people to see. But it didn't necessarily displace all those jobs. Those workers just went on to do higher level tasks. Same thing happened with the evolution of the automobile. We created lots and lots of jobs manufacturing automobiles, right? So, it can be difficult to wrap your head around this change, and it can be very easy to fall into the trap of being afraid of it. But I think if you look back in history, you'll see that time and time again, technology has been brought to bear to make humans more efficient. And it has done so with great effect and without destroying the ability for human beings to be employed or to be productive workers. Quite the opposite. I think this is a technology that, at least the way that we're using it today, is very much designed to empower the user to be, as I like to say, a force multiplier for the humans. Our AI agents replace tasks, not people. Let's humans focus on exception management, relationships, strategic work, other things that are high value. And we do not anticipate that it's going to displace the human from the loop.
Yeah, I think that's a great example how hopefully AI can not just not take away jobs, but also potentially make jobs better. Jobs will change. The nature of work and the types of tasks that a person working in a logistics office or a trucking company's back office will change, but hopefully change for the better as some of the routine, the mundane, the more robotic elements of the job become more automated. You can focus instead of on what people are better at, right? Customer service, interactions, building relationships. I think that in broad strokes, at least, that's a good way to think about how in logistics, every second counts. But what if your phone operations worked as fast as your supply chain? Meet CloneOps, AI-powered virtual agents that handle high-volume inbound and outbound calls with speed, accuracy, and zero downtime. Fewer delays, faster response times, and smarter workflows. CloneOps AI frees your team from repetitive calls so they can focus on what drives growth. Ready to turn it on? CloneOps AI, always turned on. And at this point, I'd love to get into a little bit more detail about how CloneOps is using AI specifically. So your AI agent helps logistics companies more efficiently manage communications, right? This is a huge part of any logistics operation, right? This is communications across phone, email, and text. So just tell us a little bit more about that. How are you automating these interactions across multiple channels?
Yeah, our approach is to automate inbound and outbound calls, emails, texts, really all communication channels from start to finish. Our agents can do things like confirm orders, update customers, collect documents. All of that can be done without human input, but again, with human supervision and the ability to sort of monitor what's happening and to intervene if needed. Every workflow can be customized by role, channel. There's a lot of flexibility in how the tools are deployed, and you, as a consumer of our platform, will have the option to hire, we like to say hire, a pre-configured agent from our marketplace that's already sort of designed with all of the industry expertise that I referenced earlier that's within our company. And you can use it out of the box the way that it is, or you can configure your own. You can take one of our templates and build from the template, or you can just create one from scratch. They're incredibly flexible. There's tons and tons of different ways that you can use them to integrate with your own platforms and different capabilities that exist out on the marketplace through webhooks. And there's just almost infinite possibilities of how you can deploy these agents in order to make your work more efficient.
Yeah. And, as I mentioned earlier, communications with customers and drivers really are right at the core of a logistics operation. Many of these interactions are pretty routine. They're time consuming for people to handle manually, right? Check calls and just all the phone calls at a freight broker. Why is this such an important pain point to solve for the industry?
I spent the last two sort of big career rotations in large brokerages, two of the largest brokerages that exist in the marketplace today. And one of the things that always kept me up at night was the missed phone calls. I always worried about, did we miss a call that was somebody that needed us to ship something, right? Or did we miss a call that was really important to making sure that a carrier delivered something on time? And so I would spend a lot of time, if you talk to anybody that worked with me at any of those places, they would tell you that I would spend a lot of time focusing on missed calls and trying to find ways to solve that. And so, when we look at the types of calls that logistics companies get, many of them are repetitive. Arguably, as much as 80% or more of them are repetitive calls. The alternative to not answering the phone is having an intelligent agent answer the phone and try to handle as much of the inbound communication as possible. The beauty of a system like ours, or a platform like ours, is that it's always on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It never sleeps. And you can lower your missed calls by a massive percentage pretty easily, and probably have a really big effect on your business in a really positive way, have great outcomes without a whole lot of effort. And so I feel like if you're a broker or you work in a space where you have a lot of missed calls that are showing up in your analytics about your phone system, this is something that you should really think hard about deploying just to solve that, if nothing else, just to get the phone answered, get people engaged with your company, get the information that they're looking for in their hands, or be able to service them in a way that right now you might not even be aware that there's a need for. So I think it's a tremendous opportunity for businesses like brokerages where there are just really a high percentage of unanswered calls.
Yeah, and the AI agent doesn't need a lunch or a bathroom break, and
That's right.
doesn't need to sleep at night as well.
That's right. Yeah.
Describe how so many of these calls and so many of the interactions are pretty routine in nature. Based on what you're seeing, what percentage of conversations and interactions can be automated today at this stage, right? There's going to be some oddball or kind of unique requests that require somebody to step in, but roughly how many of the phone interactions and text and emails can be automated today?
Yeah, I think the best we can do is estimate that. And I would say that the sort of frontline interactions can be automated potentially as much as 60% today, but that number is going to grow as we train agents and develop more workflows to support these businesses. It's going to vary, obviously, by business. Everybody's business is going to be a little bit different. And it's also, as I referenced earlier, going to have a lot to do with how your organization prepares for the change and rolls the change out, whether or not you achieve a number like that. But it's certainly possible.
Okay. No, that's great sort of guidelines for where we are today. And the nature of AI, of course, is that it will continue to improve. It will continue to learn and conceive further automation in the future as it develops. I think it's useful here to think about how workers will interact with the AI agents as well. So let's just talk about how this technology can streamline workflows. Think about how the daily tasks of a logistics worker or a freight broker could change once you have automated communications in place. Could you give an example of how this might transform the daily work performed by someone at a freight broker?
I think the early adopters will see real benefits from getting fewer interruptions throughout the day. The work that a broker performs is you're sort of all over the place. You're constantly dealing with a lot of different things. And so you get interrupted a lot. It breaks your flow and can slow you down and cause friction in your day. And so I think just being able to get some of those interruptions, kind of some of that interruption noise tuned down a little bit is one of the biggest benefits that you'll see immediately. As I referenced before, handling repetitive tasks so that you can really focus on the things that matter is a huge benefit. And really just kind of, turning chaos into clarity, and the phone logs into some sort of positive results. Longer term, I think the businesses that really think differently about how they operate around this new opportunity that this technology provides are the ones that are really going to win. Those use cases that we've talked about so far are the kind of obvious ones, and that's sort of how we do business today. But I think the really advanced brokers and transportation companies that are out there, as they're thinking about this technology, shouldn't just be thinking about how do I use this to do what I do now. You should also be thinking about how should I change what I do now because I have this available to me, right? It's a little bit of a different way to think about that problem. And I think for the businesses that think that way, it will lead to tremendous opportunity and growth for them.
It certainly starts to unlock some new possibilities once you free yourself up and clear that plate off a little bit.
That's right.
CloneOps officially launched its platform recently at TIA's Capital Ideas Conference in San Antonio. That's always a major event on the calendar, certainly for freight brokerages. Could you give us a quick update on the status of the rollout, market rollout, and the product launch?
Yeah, man, we are jamming right now at CloneOps. We got a lot of activity. There's a lot of high energy going on. We are rolling out early adopters and scaling our deployments really quickly. What we saw at TIA was that the response there confirmed the industry is ready for agentic AI that performs, and we're ready to serve that need. Lots of excitement, lots of successful work going on, a lot of collaboration with both customers and partners. And it's a really exciting time to be at CloneOps. I'll be honest. It's been really fun to jump into this company right at this time because the company did launch the product publicly about a week before I joined full time. And man, let's talk about drinking from a fire hose. Like, we are having fun, and it's great. It's really, really high energy, really positive environment. And it's just exciting to see that we can impact people's businesses in such a positive way, and that people are embracing that, and that they want to work with us and get the benefit of the expertise that we have with people like Dave Bell behind this and the other folks that we have on our product teams and our delivery teams who are all industry experts, just are connecting really well with the marketplace. And we're seeing the fruits of that right now.
Yeah. During the Media Day demo at TIA, one of the more interesting features that stood out to me was this live takeover capability. Freight broker can essentially step in seamlessly and take over an automated conversation if that's needed. It's not like a follow-up phone call. It's just jumping into the conversation. Is that how you see how human workers and AI agents can essentially interact and work together, where it's not this hard separation, but you can kind of seamlessly flow from one to the other, at least from the customer perspective or the other side of the phone line?
Yeah, that's very much the way that we view the world. And that's really a lot to do with the thesis behind the business. Is the people who have heard podcasts that Dave Bell has spoken on have heard us talk about this a lot, or heard Dave talk about this a lot. That's at the core of CloneOps, is the human in the loop, and setting this whole platform up so that the human can monitor all the activities of the agents and intervene where necessary. Our platform has built-in sentiment analysis. The calls can be transferred either on demand by the operator, or if things get a little dicey on the call or contentious, the operator can be flagged and told, hey, this is one you need to jump on right now. And so, the handoff is pretty seamless. It goes right to the human. It's impressive. And if you saw the demo, I'm sure you saw that. But yeah, that's really at the core of how we built this. It's really built to empower the broker to be, there's this term in the technology industry, a 10x engineer, and that's usually used to describe an engineer that uses accelerator capabilities like copilots and other tools to multiply themselves as an output of their engineering capacity. And so think about this as building kind of the 10x broker, if you will.
Yeah. That's great a way to think about that. And I appreciate the overview of the platform and what you're bringing into the industry. But when you kind of zoom out a little bit and look at other potential applications or use cases for agentic AI apart from communications, what are some other opportunities, other facets of the transportation industry where you think AI agents really hold a lot of promise for the transportation industry?
Yeah, I think the one that I'm most interested in, and it's still emerging, is fraud, is how we can use
Yeah.
the agents to help solve the fraud problem. I mean, I think any leader in this space, whether you're a technologist or you're a business leader in the freight industry, this is probably one of your biggest concerns. That one interests me the most. And so we're spending a lot of energy focusing on how we can affect the reduction of fraud and the access that criminals have to get to some of the goods that they're accessing by using technology like this to intervene. And you see a lot of companies right now that are doing amazing work, companies like Genlogs and Highway and others that are really tackling this problem head on. And so, we think about how can we bring our technology to bear to help solve that problem. There's lots of other things that this technology could be applied to solve. Things like exception management, quote generation, billing, follow-ups with customers, collections. There's just almost a limitless number of things that we could use this for. And then there's really creative things that I don't think anyone is even thinking about today that I'm sure will come along. I think we all are going to be challenged to think differently about how to use this technology. We're really scratching the surface with it. And that's one of the things that's so exciting about it and so exciting about working in this space and why I'm so fortunate to be in the position that I'm in. I get to be creative and think about these things and spend all of my energy trying to introduce these new capabilities into the marketplace. And so it's something that's really exciting for us at CloneOps.
Yeah, we're really just at the very beginning of this new wave of AI capabilities, and it will be very exciting to watch in I'd say the years ahead, but really it's probably the months ahead, as fast as it's moving. That being said, I'd love to end here on a forward-looking question. So, Brian, I'm going to ask you to look out 10 years from now. How do you envision the future of agentic AI in the freight transportation industry? How might this industry look in 2035?
This question is so hard. And it's hard because at this stage, it's hard to see 10 months from now, let alone 10 years from now. The evolution is happening so quickly, but I'll take a stab at it. I mean, I think AI will be embedded into daily operations as opposed to sort of layered on top of those operations. And like I said before, I think success will depend on how well companies manage the organizational change and how they transform their businesses. And so, when I think 10 years ahead, I think business will be done in ways that we can't even imagine today. That's like it. And I know it's not like a really satisfying answer, but I think that's really kind of what's going to happen is like, we can't even recognize what business is going to look like 10 years from now. But in the end, I think freight will run faster, leaner, smarter, and AI and agentic AI will be a big part of the catalyst to making that happen. So, it's exciting to think about, but it's also kind of intimidating to think that far out at this stage.
Fair enough, but it will certainly be fascinating to watch this unfold in real time here. It's a fun time to be in this industry.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate the conversation, Brian. I think it's a good stopping point, so we'll leave it there. Thank you once again for joining the podcast and sharing your insights. Really good stuff.
My pleasure, Seth. Thanks for having me on.
Before we close, let's take a moment to revisit our original questions. How can AI agents fit into logistics operations? And what does this technology mean for workers in our industry? As we've heard during this episode, AI agents are poised to automate specific job tasks and make decisions autonomously with minimal human intervention. This could unlock higher levels of efficiency for logistics companies while also freeing up human workers to focus instead on managing exceptions, providing better customer service, and concentrating on high-level tasks. But they are poised to make businesses more efficient and change the way that they operate in the years ahead. If you've enjoyed this episode of RoadSigns, please let others know. Rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If my questions have sparked questions of your own, share them with me and the RoadSigns team. You can email us at share@ttnews.com. Also, let us know how we did by texting TT Survey to 571-622-0001. And of course, we'll be back soon with a fresh episode of RoadSigns. Until then, I'm Seth Clevenger. Thank you for listening.